Konnichiwa. Welcome to another intriguing tale from the annals of history. Today, we journey back to the fascinating life of
the most famous Japanese samurai warrior who ever lived, and also one of the greatest strategists of all time. His name is Miyamoto Musashi. Miyamoto Musashi lived at around the turn of the 17th century in Japan. Now, when Musashi was around 21 years old, he fought and killed two members of the Yoshioka clan in duels. The Yoshioka family was very famous for its sword fighting skills. One of the youngest members of this clan, a young man named Shichiro, he vowed to get revenge on Musashi for this, and so he challenged Musashi to a duel. Musashi's friends smelled a trap here, and they warned him, don't accept this duel. Naturally, Musashi accepted it. He said, well, you better not go to this duel alone, because there'll probably be an ambush. Of course, Musashi went to the duel alone. In the last two duels with the Yoshioka clan, Musashi always had arrived late. That was a favorite technique of his, to make his opponent, to put them off their game and get them upset. This time, he arrived early, and he hid himself behind a tree. Sure enough, a couple minutes later, Shichiro showed up, surrounded with an army of 9 other samurai warriors. And Musashi could hear them talking, and one of them said, "Ha ha, that Musashi, he always shows up late. Well, that trick's not going to work this time." And the samurai warriors began to sit down and wait for Musashi to arrive. A few seconds later, Musashi jumped out from behind his tree, holding his sword, and he said, "I've waited long enough, Shichiro," and he started coming at him. Shichiro scrambled to his feet to try and defend himself. Musashi killed him in an instant. The other 9 men were so startled by this that they had no time to think about surrounding him, which would have been the only solution. Instead, they came at him, charging at him in a kind of broken line, and he went down the line and he killed every single one of them. This is perhaps the most famous duel in Japanese samurai history. After this, Musashi roamed the countryside looking for challenges. And he heard of this very famous warrior named Baiken. Baiken fought with this really strange, unusual weapon that no one had seen. Basically, he had this long, very sharp sickle, and at the end of the sickle was a chain, and at the end of the chain was a very heavy steel ball. And what Baiken would do was he would start twirling the chain and the ball until it got up a lot of momentum, and then he would charge at his opponent, and as his opponent thought of defending himself, he would hurl the steel ball at the opponent's face, and the opponent would naturally lift his sword to parry the blow, at which point the sickle would come striking across his neck and kill him. No one had ever come close to defeating Baiken. So naturally, Musashi challenged him to a duel, and Baiken happily accepted. He shows up for the duel, and he's got a short sword in his left hand and a long sword in his right hand. No one had ever fought with 2 swords like that. Baiken had never seen such a thing. It was very strange. Before Baiken has his usual chance to charge his opponent, Musashi is charging him, the opposite. So he's backing up, and he does the only thing that he knows how to do, the only way he's ever fought his whole life. He starts twirling the ball, backing up, and then he throws it at Musashi's face. Musashi parries the blow with the short sword and then kills him with the right sword, finally defeating this unbeatable man. A few years later, Musashi hears of a very famous samurai, perhaps the greatest warrior of them all in Japan, a man named Gunrio. Gunrio is not only a brilliant fighter and a very powerful man, he possesses the longest sword anyone has ever seen. And this sword is so long and it is so beautiful, it's got all these carvings on it, that just the sight of it being unsheathed is enough to make his opponent tremble with fear. Musashi naturally challenges Gunrio to a duel, and Gunrio accepts. The duel is to take place on a very small island near Gunryo's home at about 8 in the morning. Gunrio arrives at 8 in the morning, and the island is packed with spectators. This is the equivalent of Ali versus Frazier, the 2 greatest samurais of the time. Of course, Gunrio is waiting, no Musashi. It's 9 a.m., no Musashi. It's 10 a.m., he's still not there. He's pacing the island, furious, determined to just not only kill him, but rip him to shreds. Around 10 a.m., a little small wooden boat can be seen approaching the island. And as it gets closer, everyone can see that there's a man seated in the back who's kind of half asleep, whittling a very large wooden oar. And as it gets close enough, they all realize that it's Musashi. He doesn't pay any attention to anybody. Finally, the boat takes its sweet time, and it finally arrives on the island. He gets off the boat. The first thing he does is he takes a dirty towel that's in the boat, and he ties it around his head. And he jumps off the boat carrying this wooden oar. No sword at all, just a wooden oar. And he jumps off, ready for the duel. Well, Gunrio can't believe this. This is a man who's coming to the biggest fight of his life, and he's wearing a dirty towel for a headband, which is a sign of extreme disrespect, and he's carrying a large wooden oar. This is a madman. Before he has a chance to do what he usually does, Gunrio, which is charge him and impale him with his beautiful sword, here is Musashi suddenly charging at him with a wooden oar. He does the only thing that he knows how to do. He strikes back with his sword, but he misses by 1/8 of an inch, and he cuts the towel in half, and it falls down, at which point Musashi's wooden oar comes crashing down on his skull and kills him. After that, Musashi's name is made for good, and he becomes, as I said, the greatest samurai who ever lived. Musashi's opponents always tended to do the same thing, which is they depended on their incredible weapon that they had, this unusual sickle or the beautiful sword. They depended on this technique that they used time and again, and that they repeated for each battle. What I say is the equivalent of fighting the last war, something very physical and very mechanical. Musashi was the exact opposite. He never did the same thing twice. Every time he fought an opponent, he looked at that opponent, he studied him, and he determined, this is what that person's weakness is, and this is how I'm going to attack him in the moment. He adapted each and every one of his strategies to the particular characteristics of his opponent. You expected him to arrive late, he arrived early. You expected him to have one sword, he had two. You expected him to show up at this incredible duel in a very respectful costume. He arrived as a drunken, dirty peasant. Now,